Well, hello everyone. Here to show you right here of talking about with ticket moving forward right here. And let's just say that with this assignment right here is actually talking about producing copies and just for processing and verification purposes. So it's like everybody else might even say too that if you're going to be having a meeting about anything really in particular, that people might say is toward can I have a copy of that? And so, like, let's just say that anything that you're working on right here on this document right here, as you can see right here, that I went ahead and saved that to a PostScript document in Distiller, right? So it's like you would see this right here, and a lot of times it's like it's all kind of all saved into each of these files is saved onto their own document for like the standard. EPUB for standard transcript document. And so whenever I was looking at this, I was just thinking to it also gave me the message about overset text and all that. But still, if you see this right here, that all these pages all together, about 11 pages right here that we see right here. So let's just say that if we're talking about a project right here that contains maybe 11 or more pages right here, and any publisher might even ask too, is that if we're talking about maybe an actual binder right here, and let's just say that maybe if any clients or maybe want to know too that what you really are trying to do, of course, is that they're trying to send an actual document, right? That they actually are trying to send an actual document that containing with the media, plus on top of a cover letter and plus so altogether about maybe 11 or 12 pages altogether of a binder. And if they were to go ahead and try to send that document to a client, and so how would they do that necessarily? So it's like so every time you do think about that, and you're always thinking as toward that we actually would think as toward that with anything that you're going to be talking about in the meeting room, right? But a lot of times it's like, well, really, that almost everything that was on that artboard right there for sure. But it's like, so every time I do think about that, and I want to know too that, from what was on the artboard right here, and think as toward, that, so you have right here, So if everybody were to see this right here, that display right here, this InDesign document, but then still, it's like, you were thinking as toward, that this window right here was the show as toward, that you actually saved it for a PostScript, but then if you want to go and convert that to even a PDF file, just for, for the viewing, preferences, for the printing, the business documents right here, and, so it sure seems that way that each time we do think about that something like this, and want to know too that whenever it comes to print up a document though, and that top up for right here, I was I'm like but whenever it comes to print off a document, that you want to know too that it goes by saying this to where if you actually save it as a PostScript document, that you're talking about each document right here that was exported into Distiller right here, and it would show us the details right here of for the file location, all that. But still, but on the other hand too, that when we do speak about the Distiller a lot of times, we're also talking about the printed documents toward that this right here would show like is toward all this media right here originally was saved into we're talking about maybe the memory file size of up to maybe 300 pixels or something like that. But then now it's showing on here on this file right here. I'm like, that for how you're able to verify about the file size right here. So it's like you have right here that and I'll go ahead and open up right here this right here. You'll open this document up and in Acrobat right here. So I'll go ahead and open up this right here. You see right here this document right here, the viewable document. But still, you had these print selections right here where you can actually print off that document right here, type up for speak up right here. So this right here, like everybody else might say, that whenever you do actually print this out to an actual page document right here, you can see a lot of this text right here and a lot of this in writing right here. But it sure seems that way that how many of us really dream about having that ability, right? So you're thinking, Torty, how many of us would really dream about having that capability to where that we can actually, print out documents and actually, write out the conclusion and just go say, this is my best estimate, or based on what I assumed, anything like that. But it sure seems that way that every time we do speak about that in 102, that what I have right here, I'm talking about right here, that if we can all see this right here, is that this right here is show right here is that the moon right here, and the 102 that so this right here, having a desire to make a lot of money, and also this text and writing right here, but then also the progress that was made right here. So it sure seems that way that each time we do think about the moon in general, and 102 is toward that day or night, right? Day and night, and so it sure seems that way that every time we do speak about printing purposes also into like a 102 and you're thinking as toward that talk about for dreams and desire to make a lot of money, and so really that so every time we do speak about a dream though, and you're probably thinking as toward the things that you've always wanted to do, right? But it sure seems that way that do we kind of call this a capability to where you can actually distill a document as to where you want to go ahead and work a lot of this your own way. And let's just say that if you were to open up this file right here, and let's just say that if I were to open it up in Acrobat, it would open up just like that, right? And then it would give you these different selections right here to where convert to combine, or like create a PDF file document, and so you have these selections right here, and then you can say you request for a signature right here. So you have these selections right here, right? But it sure seems that way that that every time we do think about this ticket moving forward right here, could that talk about getting the job done, right? And a lot of times it sure seems that way that you're always warned to where that getting the job done, and a lot of times it's like really that even if it was not in the instructions, so even though if it was not in the directions though, you would maybe still give maybe a recommendation or maybe something else that comes to your mind, and that you would want to provide that information about that something else, and I'll go ahead and give you a clue, I'll go ahead and give you a hint about how to do this, and any preferences, right? And so it sure seems that way that every time we do think about a lot of these right here, and you want to know too that whenever you first were having this meeting right here, you were actually were not even using Acrobat Reader, you were not even using you were using InDesign, right? But let's just say if I was using InCopy, so a lot of times it's that would you show me some of the work for what selections that we have? So like everybody else might even say that if everything from what you were working on was directly as followed, and a lot of times it sure seems that way to where that every time you do speak about jobs though, and like everybody else would say is to where well, I don't really even call it jobs necessarily, just because until I get the job, it's known as for task or resources, right? But it sure seems that way that every time I do look at this right here, and 102 is to where what exactly is it that you're doing here, and what exactly is it that we're looking at? Well, this right here is page 8, and then this is a page, you got page 8, and then you got that page 7, page 6 right here. And so let's just say that all these documents right here were all were all singles, and like you have right here, talk about for paid for right here. So if I were to actually save this to a PostScript document, right? But then talk about for for distiller, that you would be able to look for like for transparency or anything. But I'll go and show everybody here this right here of talking about with the edit the PDF file document right here. So if I were to select the fonts right here, and let's just say that if I were to to translate the language right here. So every time we do think about any source of document, and you're probably thinking this toward, okay, that could you possibly translate any of the language that we see on this document right here? So like translate that to where you want to go ahead and change the language, and how many of us would really even find it real convenient whenever if you can actually translate the language and all? But I'll go in like arrow black, and so if I were to click add right there, and let's just say that if I were to say okay right there, and so so you're going to see that right there to where it's going to ask you to okay, where do you want to save this document right here? So it's going to give me a locale so say save right here. So what exactly did that do? That they actually saved that document to a specific location, right? So you just click and save right there. But then it's like so if I were to actually more likely if you use Acrobat, you could probably open that up just like that, right? But still that but if I were to say open right here, and but still that but it's like so it's like every time you do think about that in 102, that you open up a document, right? But any changes that you make from here, any changes that you make from here, and like everybody else would say, is to where that you really any editing information, so not everybody can really see what you were doing, right? So a lot of times it sure seems that way, that every time you do think about that in 102, that well really, a lot of companies would probably be modifying and verifying and processing your work, the work that you're doing, right? So not everybody can really see what you're doing, and that's why it sure seems that way to everything that you're working on, for sure. And it's like a desire to make a lot of money, and then also that really who all that's really if they're able to see what all that you're doing and what all that you're talking about. But half the time it sure seems that way, that based on the work that I put together right here in 102, that I feel like a lot of the work that I have been doing here lately has grown twice the amount from what I was really originally asked to do. So it sure seems that way, that every time you do go from InDesign and maybe go from InCopy to Distiller and into Acrobat, right? And you're thinking as to where that seems to be a lot to remember and a lot more complicated, right? So lots like so if we can all see this right here, if we can all see this right here, I'll go and zoom in right here. That talking about whenever it comes to printing, right? It's like talk about for bills or a source of information which is recorded based on what was one of the so it's like this right here would actually be what you call information that would probably be recorded on the cover letter, just to explain what all that you were talking about right here, to determine your eligibility right here. So if I were to actually produce these comments right here onto a sticky note, and let's just say if I were to paste them into each document, right, in your 102, that just for verification purposes, right? So it's like so if you were to have each document right here, but then also that if you were to go ahead and attach a cover letter right here, so it's like so every time you do look at these documents right here, and if you would actually be working with them in Distiller, and if I were to go ahead and open this up in Distiller, like talk about for graduated, right? So like everybody else might say that, okay, that for graduated, and So you see this right here. This actually right here is actually a print-ready document right here. It's a PostScript document. Want to know, okay, yeah, you want to go ahead and view this, right? Or if you want to go ahead and print this, and just click on this, print the file icon right here. So it's like, yeah, so that way, anybody who wanted to have a print of that. But would those commands really be only be available, if you were to actually, print preferences. So it's like, let's just say that if you were to actually, email this to a client, and let's just say that if you want to have a print copy of this, and then how would you do that? And so that's why it sure seems that way, that everything that you're talking about in the meeting room, and let's just say if it's maybe 12 pages long, and 102, what you would do is that you would follow those commands as to where you go ahead and you would at first, like everybody else says, is to where that if you would like to have a copy of this for sure, that you would go ahead and making sure that this right here is actually a PostScript document, right? So the document that I was showing you right here was actually an InDesign document. So like everybody else might say, is to where you go ahead and contact the publisher, contact your editor, just to figure out, okay, yeah, if you want to have a printable copy made of that. But really, it says on here that I will be getting a message on here saying as to where that there's oversized text and everything all located on this document. So like everybody else might say, is to where that, really, the only time, any printable documents for sure, that if you're going to be viewing these, for sure, that, not everybody's really going to be able to read and understand all this right here. So that's why it sure seems that way, that, I'm just really showing everybody here that, that if you were to actually use this as as a copy, and actually if it was actually stamped, stamped to where that you embed it, big text right here, to where that people can actually see all these text and writing right here, for progress has been made right here. But let's just say that right here, that on the, right here is to where that we've seen this right here whenever it comes to the picture of the moon right there. But then knowing about that for a distiller right here. So if I were to actually open this up, open up the last page right here, you can see this right here. I'm like, yeah, page, there's a page 1 and page 2 right here. And so if we can see this right here, type up for twice, incorrect, and then found right here. So this is what it would look like in Acrobat right here. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that, so anybody, who's going to be, looking at something, and maybe, if you're going to be working on any projects, so for sure that they're going to say is toward it, I would like to have a printable copy made of this. And so it's like every time you do think about that, and 102 is toward, a few of these were just they were just examples of the meetings and discussions from earlier. But like if everybody else were to be looking at this, and at 102, that for more and then twice the amount of progress that was made right here. So it sure seems that way, that somebody might even say is to where I would like to I would like to get a printable copy made of that, but it's like talk about for distiller right here. So every time we do speak about documents right here, and so all these pages right here, all about 12 pages right here, that were all put together using InDesign right here. But let's just say that if somebody were to say that they only need one copy of this, or if anything, they would like to have a printout of all 12 pages right here, that how would you work that out? Like, and well, really, that you have the options to where you can save those documents, compress them all to one PDF file document, or you can go ahead and save it to a PostScript document. And so that's what the Acrobat would do, but then also with the distiller right here, that you would have these options to where if you want to go ahead and convert to a PDF file, but then also you had these editing options right here. So if you were to have right here for edit, document PDF and then add it to PDF right here, and so it's like so you have these options like you go about for the files, right? But then also whenever it comes to editing right here, and set for the standards right here, advanced settings right here. So if we could see this right here, that you see right here, you convert to the smooth line to curves, and then also for the default right here. So it's like so each time we do speak about the distiller, that it's like save original JPEG images in PDF if possible. So every time we do think about a project that you're working on in InDesign, and you're always thinking as toward it, you go back to that specific location in that file. You see this location right here, everybody. On your system, even if it's a cloud, if you go back and look at those files, and you would maybe see on there that you have multiple duplicate copies made of the same files, but then this right here is the PostScript document. This right here is also is the read So you have these different print preferences, and it followed different differences right here. So it's like so every time you do think about that, and you're always thinking as to where that, man, I am just not organized right here, and I don't even know what all this means right here. So every time you do think about this, and you're thinking as toward it, whenever you were looking at this document right here, it was only 2 pages, and once upon a time, it was only 2 pages. If anything, maybe 1 page that you had to worry about, right? And now it's 12 pages. And so now you're thinking as toward all the things that you talked about during the meeting, at the meeting, right? And you're 102, that can you please explain what all that you were working with right here? And so that is why it sure seems that way, that like everybody else might say, is to where that, have you dreamed about having that ability to where you can actually produce your own information onto a document and actually place big letters right here onto this document and expect anybody to really understand that? And I say, no, not everybody's really going to understand it unless that they experienced what you're talking about, or maybe if they were familiar with what you were talking about from earlier. But it sure seems that way, that every time we do think about that in 102, that well, why did I think about that? But still, that so every time, so I'll go and bring up a distiller right here, but still, it's like so every time you do think about any sorts of project, and I'll go and move right here, this right here, so that way we can all see this right here. Just because if you're using this right here as a guide, and then you're just going to go ahead and just return these pages right here in 102, that so if I were to use this right here as like a document right here, and if I were to pull up distiller right here and put this right here on the corner right here, and you're thinking as toward it, that, man, I don't understand what all this is for right here, and what's the purpose of it, but still, that I'll tell everybody that if you've ever worked in an office before, if you've ever worked at an actual desk, just to look at these as to where they're actually pieces of paper that were placed on your desk, right? You have right here is this right here, these documents right here, and then you have this folder right here. So like, let's just say if you were to actually look at this right here as your actual desk right here, you have these documents right here placed on a desk right here, and then you see this right here, that this right here would be an example right here of a folder. So you have this folder right here containing all these documents right here, and then you have this one page right here that's already open, right? So you can actually read these right here. Page that's already open, but then this window right here in Acrobat would actually display the information right here of talking about is toward the print ready. Okay, would you like to print this? Would you like to print these pages right here? And how would you like to print this? And So it would, like, yeah, I can go ahead and show you right here what this does right here, but it's like a, yeah, so it's like a, this print menu that would come up, but it sure seems that way that, yeah, the print menu right here. So you have these different options right here to where that, yeah, the HP Office Jet series if you're connected to networking, and also the Microsoft Print PDF, and also Microsoft XPS document writer, and then the OneNote desktop, and then you have the OneNote for Windows 10 right here, and then you have right here type of for advanced print set, like, yeah, for advanced right here. So you have, like, yeah, so I guess that this right here would be so yeah, so it's going to bring up this menu right here, and it looks like so yeah, that talk about for processing can, so yeah, like that's for CMYK or JPEG 2000 images resolution right here. So really that so if you're going to be printing out something, and for sure that like all the other printing professionals would even say too that really that why can't you just make this more simple to where that more easier for somebody like me to understand, just because of the fact that whenever you have these printing purposes, you have right here's the bleeds right here, so yeah, you have these different selections right here. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that that if you have these installed on your system, number one, and two, that if you are using them, like yeah, if you're going to be printing directly from Acrobat, then you would have these different selections right here. So you have Ink Manager right here. So like yeah, on your printer, and also if you have Acrobat installed on your computer, that you would have options there. And so it sure seems that way that every time you do think about that and want to know too that if you would actually send that document to a client, for sure that they're not going to know really what all this stuff right here means. And so it's like yeah, so it's like so I'm like yeah, maybe not, but still it's like every time you do think about that and want to know too that yeah, that you always thought is toward a printing pretty much means is toward that you would like to have an actual document printed on paper, but still, whenever you do say print, that can also mean printed PDF. That can also mean exported, like sent to print purposes, and also advanced features right here. So it's like yeah, so you have right here yeah, top up for bleed right here, and the bleed markings, and so yeah, so it's like so this right here is what it would look like before it went to the printer right here. So if you see this right here, that this right here is the printing purposes right here. And yeah, so it's like if I would actually print that document. So this is what it would look like right here, and I can go and I'm like, would I have this zoom in? I'm like, yeah, page 1 and 2. Okay, yeah, page 1 and page 2 right here. But still, properties right here. I'm like, yeah, if I want to go ahead and use, if I want to fax that to a client or something, and yeah. So if I were to actually, yeah. So I had that ability to where I can do the fax printer right here. So if I were to actually send a fax, and so yeah, the actual size right here, poster size right here. So yeah, 17 by 11 inches. So yeah, so you have these different options right here from how you want to print. So like, let's just say that if we're talking about 12 pages right here all together, like everybody else might say, that this job right here seems to be a lot more complicated than what a lot of everybody else really wants to deal with, for sure. And maybe that's another reasons why, like everybody else might say, is to where that you may think is to where that maybe not everything is going to be explained on paper, for sure. Not everything is explained on paper, so that's why it sure seems that way. That everybody else would say is to where, yeah, that's why I would prefer to just look at the two pages right here. I can just stare like everybody else might say that they would prefer just look at just one page or just 2 pages right here. But still, it's like, yeah, all this other stuff that I don't quite understand it, or if anything, I'll just leave it up to the experts really to deal with it or whichever. But still, but I'll even tell everybody, yeah, it all started out with toward it, yeah, the topic for advertisements, all right. But it's like, yeah, so if anybody were to get a printout of something, really, I just really want something printed on paper, if anything, so that way I won't have to deal with all this other stuff. But everybody else might say is to where it's all about getting the job done, right? It's all about getting the job done, and that is why it sure seems that way. That I'll go ahead and go right here to page number 1 right here, if we can all remember page number 1. And talk about for I don't know right here, and I'll go ahead and put for distiller right here. And so if I were to open up page number 1, and it would open up page number 1 right here, and like everybody says, to where if you want to go ahead and get a print ready copy of that, and if I were to click print right here, and 102 that okay, yeah, print ready, and for save ink and toner. So you have these options right here, yeah, where you can save ink and toner and all that. And it sure seems that way that you have these, yeah, as long as they're installed for sure, as long as they're installed, but like everybody else might even say, is toward that the next time you click print from your machine, from your system, then you might get a different window, on your side. You might see on there that usually the windows are just a little bit different than compared to what you usually see, and a lot of times you'll want to know too, well, what's that all about? All you ask to print, but then also you're going to come up to this menu right here, and people might say is to where that how do you want to print this? And you have these different like as long as they're installed for sure, as long as they're running and installed and updated on your system for sure, you might have different preferences, and that is why it sure seems that way. That like everybody else might say is to where that one of your first jobs of being for a graphic designer or for a designer or for a publisher would be is to where to spend at least a couple of hours at a time, just so that way you can work with the client, just to be able to get these print copies ready, and just so that way you can explain to them, what all that they have to do. Hey, I don't know how to get a copy made of this document here. Can you please walk me through what I need to do? And so you have right here these selections right here, everybody, and I don't know if everybody has checked that out about faxing right here. You have right here that if anybody knows anything about how to fax a document, and where you actually I'm like, yeah, I had this for print fax right here, and then for properties, and I can go and click properties right here, and for sure it's going to bring up a different menu right here of these properties, and these selections right here. And right here that it's going to say that for letter small, and then for letter plus and letter, and then for Lego, and then for envelope size right here, for rotated envelope size 3 for number 3, and then rotational, and so you have these different selections right here, and for ISO 85, and for index card. So so every time you click print from your printer, that you're going to maybe see that toward it, it's going to come up with a different windows, a lot of stuff that you don't quite understand, and like even if you did understand it, it seems like that you have to take a few moments just to be able to look it over, just to see. Okay, so like everybody else would say, is to where like anybody who's going to be using distiller for sure, you would need to. For sure, you would need to pay attention to make sure that that if you click print, and if you're waiting for your printer to print those documents that you requested to print, that let's just say that your print options were set to where, okay, yeah, those documents were saved, but it was saved as those files right there are not being sent directly to your printer, that they were sent to that cloud location where they were sent using a different provider, you're using a different program. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that every time you do, whenever you're printing something, it's like almost all the time it sure seems that way, that whenever you do change the settings and you do a few adjustments, for sure, it's like, yeah, everybody else might say that yeah, that whenever you do print something, that whenever you were very first introduced to the printer, number one, whenever you were first introduced to the printer, number one, that you were probably thinking as to where, okay, yeah, I want a paper copy of that, so how would I do that? And so you would walk somebody through the steps on how they would do that, right? And so you're thinking as to where, hey, I just asked for just one copy, or I just need one copy of all this, all 5 pages right here, just one copy of each, or yeah, I'd like to have a duplicate copy of those edits or those other changes that you made right there. So how would I do that? So it's like, so yeah, you would need it to show them, like, anybody who asks, how to do that. And so that is why it sure seems that way, that every time you look at your printer, and you're going to maybe say, like, yeah, okay, the paper size right there. But everybody else might say is to where, yeah, well, paper doesn't just mean the actual paper, the ink and toner type paper, but I guess there's different ways of how you want to describe paper. I guess there's also the PDF type of paper, and then there's, I'm like, yeah, that envelope, rotational. Okay, I'm pretty sure these right here, yeah, this is the actual printing type paper right here. If I were to actually, if I were to select the paper type right here, so like, maybe 11 by 15 cm RAM or something like, yeah, or letter, I think, yeah, 4 by 8 by 10 inches right there. So if I were to click OK right there, for sure that poster size right here, and if I were to click print, for sure they would go probably go to my printer, right? But still, but no, it would go to the fax. Print fax. So if I were to select my printer right there, but then yeah. So if I were to select which that's connected to the wireless right there. So if I were to select that and say print right there, then it would go directly to my printer, right? But if I were to click on here for print purposes right here, I would see these different selections right here. So like, let's just say if a PDF file print was selected by mistake, then yeah, that if I were to go to my printer and see that it's not doing anything, then that's whenever I would have to go back and look to see, well, okay, what's going on here? Well, you have Adobe PDF selected right here. And so if I were to select print, and like, yeah, well, if you do that, for sure that, it would go to print, but then it would go to print as a PDF file, if we can all see that right there. So a lot of times it sure seems that way, that almost all the time, that, if you're going to be working in a print room, in a print press room, or any sorts of a publishing company, they might even say that, you just really have to look really closely at these settings. But it's like, you may want to know too that every time you're going to be based on your experience, though, you're always thinking to where that why do you always have to remember that every time you select print, that you always have to remember to make sure that that you have the office jet, your actual printer selected. Why is it that you always have to remember that that's selected right there, and say that this is what it looks like and for what you're trying to print, right? But every time you're going to be working on something, and you're always warned to where that whenever you click print, from whenever you select the print option, the print command tool from the program, then for sure that that does not always mean printed paper, right? And even if it did, and it's like, well, there's also the print command available for the PDF file, and then also for Windows edition, and that's whenever you think as toward, okay, yeah, that my printer is not printing. What's going on here? And then you have to go back just to be able to check those settings. But still, so I'll go and show everybody here. Yeah, this right here for Acrobat right here, and then you have right here for Distiller, and so every time you do look at that, and you're always thinking as toward it, what's next? Okay, well, what's next after this? But still, that so every time you do think about that, and you're always thinking as toward it, if you actually were to show anybody all these details right here, for sure, they'll probably say that I think it's real neat, on how it's done. Number one, I think it's real neat, for what you're able to do all right here. That you're able to form a document and actually send it for print ready, right? But at the same time, it sure seems that way that, the way we think about that, and you're always thinking is toward that whenever you're trying to print something for sure, that you're thinking is toward, okay, that's not always, if you're talking about for paper type, right? But still, that if you're trying to fax the same document to a client, or maybe if you try to send it by email or something like that, and it's like it works just a little bit differently, just because it's going to ask you what folder do you want to save that in. It's going to bring up a different menu right there, and so that is why it sure seems that way that everybody else would say is toward it. That's another way of how you want to call it, is toward it. That's another waiting period to where that whenever you're going to be working any sorts of job, and like everybody else might say that, really that, you thought that this job was only going to take you maybe 30 minutes just to be able to do all of it, but at the time it's like, that, what do you call those jobs toward it, whenever it comes to the fact about, whenever something takes a lot longer than you thought it did, but still, everybody else might say is toward, whenever you graduate for sure, that you even have to worry about all those other tasks that maybe that you were assigned to from earlier, but like everybody else might even say is toward it, that you might think that you've done everything that you were asked to do, but on the instructions, right? But it sure seems that way that every time you do think about that in a 102, that it's all about getting somebody to like what you do, and you appreciate what you do, number one. So every time you do think about that, and you're thinking is toward that every time you do think about a job, number one, every time you do think about a job, it sure seems that way is to where that you came onto the job part-time, and or doing freelancer work, or it was just temporarily, and but still. So if you're going to be going to a meeting, though, in 102, that you may feel like that you did twice the amount of work that you were working on. And 102, top up for everything you explained right here. But it's like, every time you do think about that, and you're thinking as to where, hey, that, why is it that, if you have about maybe 12-page documents right here, and you're thinking as to where that, if everything was made all easy and simple, for sure, but still. But I thought I'd go ahead and talk about everybody here, talk about her dreams, and talk about her desire to make a lot of money. So what does that mean in general? Well, that pretty much means is toward it, that having a desire to make a lot of money is toward it, that, it can mean a number of things, really, but whenever it comes to actually doing work, and maybe whenever it comes to understanding about, that question is maybe going to be asked about as toward it, if you're trying to, if you're trying to return to work, or if you're trying to return to school, or maybe get a promotion for a job or something like that. And so it's like, everybody else might say that, well, really, that's not really, having this desire to make a lot of money, if that's really, like everybody else might say, is to it, that's not really, do you really call that a lot of money? Or if anything, well, you have a desire to maybe please, maybe a few clients that you're going to be working with in the near future or something like that, or, but still. But every time I do think about that question right there, I actually think about that toward I actually have a desire to show progress within the 12 hours. Besides the electronic signature, that was really part of my research that I was working with right here, was actually showing that, whenever it comes to dreams. And I also want to talk about everybody here about dreams right here, mainly because about a lot of things that I was working right here that, not everybody's able to see and understand what all that you were working with right here, and what all that you've seen until you were able to explain it. And that's why it sure seems that way, that, talk about for dreams. And so having that ability to where that you can actually allow other people to look at your stuff, number one. So like every time I do think about that and 102, what exactly is it that people are thinking about whenever they look at your stuff? And want to know that, that they're able to see all the stuff that you're working with. And like I say, I think I have a better understanding on how to distill something, and knowing about to open that up in Acrobat. And so this right here, talk about for print ready. And so if I'm sure everybody would maybe like to have a print ready of this right here. So if you were to actually get a print ready document made of this, and you have right here print on both sides paper. So so you would select that if you want to go ahead and flip alongside the edges for print on both sides. So you would have that option to where you can print on both sides right there, and choose paper source by PDF paper size right here. And so it's like, so print multiple, or booklets right here. So you would have those different print, for multiple page documents right there. 2-page, for poster right there, for poster size. But then for sizes right here. And you have right here, talk about for comments and forms. Comments and forms, okay, if you want to go ahead and, for the form fields only, right here. So these are the different print, for the document right here. And everybody else might say that if you were to actually be in an actual meeting right here in a 102, that especially if you're talking about maybe on Zoom call, if you're going to maybe be on a Skype connection, or maybe on Zoom call, or maybe on Teams meetings or something like that, and if you were to be showing somebody all this right here in 102, that if I want to go ahead and get a printable copy of this new document right here, where it shows discount right here, just for my reference, just so that way I can see just a little bit about what's going on right there and how it works. And so markups, the documents and markups right here. And I could probably assume to know about what that is right there, about any comments right there, and comments and markups. And so really that I really would think, I'm like, page setup right there, page setup. And so if I were to click on that, so it gives me these different print options right here, and for paper, for the paper options. And portrait and landscape right here. So really that so right now I'm like, right now that right there, everybody, that right there looks a little, looks really small, and I don't know if everybody else can really see that very well, but then if you would actually enlarge that print, and I know like everybody else might say that that's whenever we would need a publisher or a printing personnel to print that, to where if this right here is too small to where you cannot read that, then you would have these advanced features right here to where you can actually, especially if you don't understand how all this works right here, then I guess you go ahead and leave that up to the expert, just to know exactly how that works, just because of the fact that, leave that up to the print expert just because that, all these other menus and, all these other selections and all that, not everybody really wants to mess with it. I mean, I don't blame anyone if they don't want to mess with it, but at the same time, note that, really, what have you learned whenever you look at it? Whenever you look at it, and then you'd see this right here. All these print selections right here, and you're thinking as to where that, with Acrobat right here, and you have right for e-sign. So if I were to click a e-sign request signature right here, and fill and sign yourself, and so I would have that option right here, and fill and sign yourself, and so I would have that command right there if I want to sign a document right there. But it's like, so it's like every time you do think about that in 102 that speak up, and so I really just think too in a lot of ways that even though like everybody else might say that really that you were talking about this mainly about that is to where if you were trying to get copies made, and let's just say that maybe if you were trying to work on your taxes or something like that, and thinking too that so it's like so a lot of stuff like I tell you one thing, everybody, that how many of us really would maybe dream about having your own office where you had the ability to where you can actually print documents and actually use enlarged text in your writing and say speak up right here. So like let's just say that if this right here was supposed to be an example right here of like maybe for anything for journalism or anything like that, or anything such as newspaper readings or something like that. So if I were to actually create and produce this at my own time and manner and actually print this out, and let's just say if it was published, right? And you're thinking as to where how many of us would have that source of dream to where you actually had that ability right there. And like everybody else might say, is to where really, I think in a lot of ways it's all about is just to where for who really likes the work for what you were working on, for sure. But still. But every time you do think about that, and you're thinking as to where that not everybody really understood what all that you were working with right here, and so that's why it's like that's why all these windows and everything is like talk about for for these documents, but for page 8 right here and page 9 and 10. So if I were to open, I'm like this right here, talk about for found and paid for right here, with like to find something. So I thought I'd show everybody that right there. I'm like all these documents right here, but then if you would export them, to Distiller and actually send those to your printer, then you would have those options to where you can actually look at that document right there. But at the same time, you're probably thinking as to where it, so if you would actually, you had these, we had these different edits, you editing, but and then you also have this right here to where you can actually oversized printing right here, and then you can actually set that to the print press quality right here, and the standard classic right here. So let's just say that off all these documents right here, and let's just say if you have altogether maybe 25 pages altogether, and let's just say if you were working on a project that contained maybe up to 100-page documents right here. Not everybody really wants to mess with that, right? So let's just say that if it contained 100 pages all right here, if it contained 100 pages right here, but then out of those 100 pages, you were asked, could you go ahead and save that? Could you go ahead and print this and have it print ready, all 100 pages right here, but then also go ahead and have it print ready to where if you can actually print ready for a review, for print, press ready for review, so that way we can actually see that. So all these documents, right? I'm like, yeah, this whole document right here is actually InDesign. But if somebody were to ask, okay, can I go ahead and open this up in either Office or could I go ahead and open this document up using using Acrobat and I'm like, yeah. So you have these different print pressing ready. So it's like yeah. So really, that the whole purpose about being a designer and being that source of digital media preference producer and then a designer would be is toward all this information right here, all this media right here, it's produced onto a document, right? But then my job, of course, would be is toward I would provide this information onto a PDF file document, then I would send that to a client, right? You would actually send that to a client, and then that client, of course, would actually send that to the person that they were working with, and so you actually were to coordinate, right? You would actually coordinate with somebody that need to have those. So yeah, so if I were to actually be producing these documents, and if I were to actually be working for an actual company that needed those documents for that reason, so like you say, yeah, this about this meeting, but then let's just say that this right here was supposed to be made for for copies and resources, and also if we're talking about for ticket moving forward, and thinking too that time for distiller, and so it's like every time I do think about that, and I'm also thinking as to where that that whenever it comes to most jobs though, and want to know too that that was not in the instructions, but still. But at the same time, to tell everybody too that that was not in the instructions. That was not in the instructions, but do you have a desire to learn a lot more than what you were originally were asked to learn, and also do you see progress being made? So that would probably be another way of how you want to call this toward talking about understanding about even for exchange and all that information knowledge right there. So hopefully that's some good information right there to get to everybody, but still that everybody else might say is toward how many of us would actually dream about having that ability to where you can actually you want to go ahead and based on your research that somebody was able to get a job done based on your suggestions and your preferences, and so I say, would you walk me through what you found out about how this works and all that, and so it sure seems that way that every time we do think about that, you go from page 4 and 5, both of these pages right here. Enclosed right here is page 1 and 2 right here. So every time you do think about that, and you're thinking is toward, so if distiller were to come in mind right here, and let's just say if all this right here was 100 pages right here, and like everybody else might say is to where I don't have time to really look at all these 100 pages right here, and so that's why it's like you have distiller right here, and then you would have this to where you would actually print this out, and so like everybody else would say is toward if we're talking about maybe 100 pages right here, and you want to think as toward so it's like my job would be is toward you actually put together the media. The media right here, there originally contained nearly thousands of pixels worth of documents right here. You actually built a document containing to where it reduced the amount of size of the pixels, right, to where it was made it viewable, made it visible to the clients. But then now the clients, all they really need to do is look in that document. All they had to do is just look at that document, and then look just to make sure that everything looked all updated, and then they would have it print ready, right? So it sure seems that way, that every time we do look at that, and I want to know too that whenever you're based on the job though, and it's like that and more. So it's like so every time you do think about a job though, and you want to know too that I was originally hired to do the designing and then the publishing, but still that can you do a little bit more than that? Could you also do you have another source of skill for information knowledge about how to be able to place stamps, and of course how to create how to compress files and all that. So that might be the next source of agenda, right? But at the same time, it sure seems that way. That talk about for understanding about print writing. But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.